AI will open up thoughts for you that you could never possibly have thought of yourself, because you can't create all the constructs that it will create to do all these different type of variants of analysis. And it doesn't care if it does 1,000 things and 999 don't generate anything. It's ready to do another 1,000.
It's powerful, the information that you've shared. And anybody looking at it 2 years, 5 years down the line would look at this interview and be like, I should have listened to that guy. if they are late on this process, because what you shared is very valuable.
Which meant 91% said there's something. And that something fell into 3 categories. And I think this is really, really key for us to understand. Because the buyers are telling you, if you will do this for me, I'll invite you to the party earlier.
Hey guys, this is Ashish Janiani. Thanks so much for joining today's interview. Now think about this. Think about artificial intelligence in your business, in your company, and in sales as a role. Think about speaking to a guy who's been into sales and research for the last 30 years. Think about this guy doing thousands of company researches on how sales is changing, the evolving role of artificial intelligence, how that's going to impact your role in the coming years. And think about 30 minutes with this guy. Jim Dickie is a writer for Harvard Business Review. He's been published with Top Sales World, CRM magazines, amongst others. If I know of anybody on this planet who is probably one of the key authorities on what's happening with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the development of sales, it's this man. It's my privilege to have Jim Dickie on the show. I want you to take notes, take this very seriously, because we shot this in 2021. And when you look back at this interview in 2022 and 23, a lot of things would have changed. And you would look back at this video and be like, I should have implemented this and I should have listened to this guy. So let's welcome Jim. Hi, Jim. Good morning out there. How are you doing?
Very good, Ashish. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Are you ready?
Sure, whenever you are.
All right. So, Jim, I wanted to start about the background. What you do is unique. And you are the first guest that we have who's going to speak about artificial intelligence and how it is changing the sales world. So if you can give a little background about how did you get into this? What was the curiosity behind that? And what are you currently doing?
Okay. Well, Ashish, my background, actually, when I went to college and went to graduate school, my degrees were in counseling. And it was interesting because when I graduated, I got a call from IBM and they said, we'd like to talk to you about a job. And I said, in human resources? And they said, no, in sales. And I said, in sales? And I said, what's sales? And they said, what's counseling? And I said, well, I ask a lot of questions. They said, like what? And I said, well, how long has it been like that? What would better look like? And if we didn't do that, what else would we do? What's standing in the way of progress? And they said, give it a shot. So I got into sales and I got into technology in the early ages and just kind of found it to be a really interesting way of working with people, of solving problems together. And just kind of as it moved along, I was always in the technology era. I co-founded 3 software companies. So that I had a good idea of technology. But when we sold our last company, I started saying, nobody's doing primary research on what's going on in the world of sales. This is back in 1994. And so we started going out and surveying thousands of companies worldwide, asking them real simple questions. What's going on in your sales organization right now? So we gathered like 108 different metrics, and we continued to gather that data all these years so we can show you what the longitudinal aspects of sales has been like. But you notice when things were changing, when the economy got good, when the economy got bad, when there was political stability, when there was political uncertainty, when there was no competitors in your space, when there were too many competitors in your space. But what's really been coming up now recently is, people started talking a few years ago about how the buy cycle has changed. And I think that's been a huge move because when I started selling for IBM, if you wanted information on our products, you had to talk to me. I had all the information. Well, don't need to do that anymore. Your marketing's putting all the information on your website. Your competitors are doing the same thing. There are people who are using your products who are posting reviews of what they're doing. So there's a ton of product information that buyers can get without talking to sellers. And so then it becomes, well, what's the role of the salesperson? How is that changing? Because we used to talk about, well, we're relationship salespeople. We go and build relationships with people. And that's what really got me excited. A few years ago, my company was acquired by a company called Miller Heiman. They do sales training worldwide. And they sat there and said, we'd like you to stay around and just go research what the future of sales is going to look like. We'll continue to do all the old studies. You look out into your crystal ball on what's changing. And, based on my technology background, I said, let's take a look at artificial intelligence. What's happening there? And is there really something that's going to be applicable for the world of sales? And we were blown away. Because we started seeing that people were not, there weren't these robust suites, AI for sales suites that did a lot of things, but people were taking little aspects of customer lifecycle management. And they were coming back in and saying, well, let's apply technology to do prospecting. Let's do it to do a needs analysis. Let's do it to configure the best solution. Let's do it to minimize customer churn. And it was really starting to work. The hardware was there, the software was there, the data was there, and there were intelligent people actually building applications that were going to change what salespeople did. And so I think the biggest thing that we saw out there was, here's a new revolution coming with data. It's going to change the sales construct. But what does that look like for salespeople? And, does it not only change how we sell, is it going to change who is successful selling? And that's really what we've been doing for the last 3 years. We're just conducting our 3rd annual AI for Sales study. We've identified 245 different solutions worldwide.
Wow.
That people are doing some very interesting things. And we're going in and actually interviewing the sales team saying, what are you doing with this? How is it different than what you were doing before? And what are you learning? And what we're finding is right now, the biggest change is, we're used to first mover advantages in sales. So if you have two companies that didn't have a formalized sales process and one of them implements Challenger or Miller Heiman or whatever, I can show you statistically that they should outperform their competitor. The percentage of reps making quota will go up, the win rate of forecast deals will go up, customer churn will go down. By the way, churn will go down because people like working in successful, predictable environments. And they will have that advantage until the competitor does the same thing. But with AI, what we're finding is AI gets better by itself. There's a machine learning capability. So if somebody starts down the road and they get that first mover advantage and you try to catch up, you may never catch up. So this is going to be a party you don't want to be late to.
Wow. Well, that's pretty solid to even begin with. Let me start with this question then, because there is so much in my mind going on. Artificial intelligence, what is it for a salesperson? And is there a different way to use artificial intelligence if you are a startup entrepreneur and if you are a huge organization which has a lot of salespeople who still make the calls and who still go out in the field? If we can start with these two important questions.
Sure, it's a great question, Ashish, because I think a lot of people are saying, well, we've got artificial intelligence. What they really got is the system does a little bit of analytics, maybe a little bit of big data. So let's get back to it. Is that basically AI is focused on doing two things for salespeople. It's increasing their efficiency and it's increasing their effectiveness. Well, what does efficiency look like? Well, today, most salespeople are expected to be data entry clerks for their CRM system. So I find a new contact at one of my prospect companies, I put it into your CRM system, Salesforce, Dynamics, whatever. Somebody changes their email address, I have to go in and update it. Somebody changes the phone number, I have to update it. So that's efficiency types of things. And what AI is doing things like, okay, I get an email from one of my prospects. And it says, dear Jim, it was really great talking to you. We're interested in seeing a demo. And I'd like our VP of marketing and our VP of manufacturing to also sit in. I've copied them on this email. Well, now AI is smart enough to read that email and take a look and say, okay, well, here's two names. goes and checks in CRM and says, they're not in the database yet. So why don't I go in and create the contact records? I know that this person is the CMO. I know that this person is the VP manufacturing. I've got their email addresses because I can parse the email and see that type of stuff. So all of a sudden it's doing things where it becomes almost like the virtual assistant for a salesperson. And so that's designed to give them more time to sell. But that just means my average salesperson is making more average sales calls. And what I need is my average person to make great sales calls. So that's where you get into the effectiveness, where it's there to augment. So it would go out and do things like, okay, here's two people. I don't know anything about them. So do I just go and wing it when I do the presentation? Well, no, there's actually technology that would go out and say, okay, I know this person. Let's see if they're out there on social media. And it goes and finds out, here's their LinkedIn profile, here's their Twitter profile, here's things they like, here's something on YouTube where they spoke at a conference. So all of a sudden it's doing things to research for me to make me more effective when I engage that person. So it's those types of things. And then there's a machine learning aspect of this where AI starts to make suggestions to you, but as it gives you suggestions and you act on them, it gets smarter. So let me give you an example. We worked with a financial institution. We did a case study on them where they had 4.2 million customer records.
Wow.
And so they pointed AI at those things and they said, of these people that are already customers, are there people that are likely to want to buy something else from us? And so it went through and did calculations, ran 4.2 million records in 2 hours, gave everybody a score of 1 to 100. And they told the financial officers, call on everybody who's got a score of 81 and above. And they had a 234% increase in conversion rates of existing customers to net new opportunities. So very impressive gain to begin with. But when I called their SVP of strategy a year later and I said, I'm getting ready to speak at a conference, I'd like to use that figure in my talk. He said, go ahead, but he says, but that's the old figure. And I go, what's the new figure? And it goes 386%. So 234 to 386%. And I said, what did you do differently? He says, nothing. The algorithms got smarter. They started realizing that, we shouldn't be really emphasizing net worth. We should be emphasizing geography or the age or how many kids they have. And so we go back through and do this different analysis, and it got smarter. So that's the other wild card on this whole thing, is that AI not only helps you increase your efficiency and effectiveness, it also gets smarter over time and gives you better and better suggestions. And in relationship to your second question, is AI for big companies or little companies? The answer is yes, it's for both. Clearly, there's some large companies that are going out there, but I did a presentation at Salesforce.com's Dreamforce where I had Legend Boats. So this is a boat manufacturer in Canada. They have around 20, what they call dream makers. That's what they call their salespeople. Because they said when people buy a boat, when you ask them, why'd you buy a boat? What was it about? So, oh, because I got to go fishing with my dad, or we used to go pontooning out on the lake with the family. They were creating memories. So that's what they call their salespeople. But they actually implemented an AI solution to go in and help them forecast better. And so, small company, not a big IT group, but that's the real key advantage right now. What's going on in AI is companies are developing applications. So you take things like Einstein Voice or Gong or Chorus, any size company can implement those, and it will record meetings like this. It'll take the transcript of the voice, turn it into text, and it'll analyze the text. And so you could go back through and tag it and say, when did the prospect bring up our competitor's name? And what did they say about it? When did pricing come up with the conversation? So those types of things are going to make me more effective, also make my manager more effective as a coach, because they don't have to listen to a full hour conversation. They could just go through and say, let's talk about when Jim was talking about the new product, and let's just go from there. So I think it's really at the standpoint now where any size company could do it. The key thing is it's got a very small footprint right now in the sales space. And that's something that I think people need to address, talk about, is it's okay for you to decide not to implement AI for sales, as long as you know that doing something else is more important. You got to go educate yourself on what this can do today. Because again, if you are behind the curve on this thing 2 or 3 years down the road, you may never catch up with your competitor.
Wow. Okay, I think that's very useful, for people to understand what AI is. And from what Jim's saying, you got to start looking into it very seriously, because your life does depend on sales, no matter what business you are. Now, let me ask you the next question, Jim. It might sound a little silly, but I'm coming from a perspective of somebody who doesn't know AI, right?
Okay.
Where does AI go? so, I'm imagining AI to be this thing. Now, how does it fit into everything? Is this something that we go buy as a software? Do we hire a coder, or where does this thing come in?
The main thing that we're pretty excited about right now is the number of companies that are actually writing applications. They're creating solutions. So you don't have to go out and hire your own data scientists. You just have to hire people who know how you engage customers, what the problems are with the process, et cetera. Because if you had to go out and get data, there's not enough data scientists in the world to do all the things that we want to do with AI. So I think the number one thing is to go out and say, first off, is there an application out there that we could do? But what it is really is, it's a technology that sits within your tech stack, your existing things, and it starts taking a look at data in your CRM system, in your ERP system, in your customer service system, in your marketing automation system, and also starts taking a look at data from outside sources. Is there third-party data that you could, buy from some other vendor? Is there embedded data that you could pull out of things by looking at websites or looking at LinkedIn or looking at YouTube, et cetera? Because it can handle structured data, text, can also handle unstructured data, pictures, voice. And so what it does is AI is very, very good at crunching numbers and looking for trends. What AI doesn't have is judgment. So that's the thing where it's there to be a partnership with salespeople. It's there to augment what they do. It will replace what some people do. So you have to take a look at, what your company is selling. If what you're having with customers is transactions, what are transactions? They're rapid, repetitive, routine. AI can take over those types of things. When I go today and start ordering things online, I have things like Amazon suggest stuff to me. I was just getting ready to buy some new cables, USB cables for my cell phone. Well, it came back with suggestions on that. There's a little bit of AI there. It knows what I'm looking for. It suggests those things. And so it will take care of transactions, but it will help salespeople then have interactions. They're interactions. They're protracted. They're complex. They're value add. They're discussions I have where we're talking about, let's solve problems together. And that's where AI is going to help me. It's going to increase my ability to work on things. I'll give you an example. We found an AI company in Los Angeles that's gathering data on agriculture. So what it does is specifically it's looking at farmers, and it could be a single family farm to a huge conglomerate. But there's satellites that are flying over these fields that are gathering data every day on what's the moisture content of that field. There are also drones that are flying over the field that will tell you what the temperature is. There are also sensors on your tractor, and as it goes up and down the field, it will tell you if there's any pest infestation in the field. And by the way, what quadrant is it in? So I don't have to spray the entire field with insecticide, just this little small piece on it. Well, think about that now. If it's aggregating all that data, and that data is now available to financial officers who are doing, agricultural loans, it changes the whole dynamics of the conversation. Because I call you up and I say, Ashish, tell me about your farm. That's a discussion we'd be having last year. And you tell me that you're going to be moving from corn to soybeans. You're going to tell me when you're going to plant. You're going to tell me that you need to upgrade some of your farm equipment. And based on you telling me things, I'll come back to you and work with you on solving those things, based on lines of credit or leases on equipment or whatever. But now with this data, I call you up and I say, Ashish, let me tell you about your farm. Because I can get access to data and I can afford to do it across all of my customers. And I could sit there and say, you were talking about going from corn to soybeans this year. You were going to be planting in early spring, and because of the fact that there was a lot of rain, we were late to planting. It also looks like right now we're going to be a little bit late to harvest, and the harvest is looking like it's going to come in at 97% of expectations, not 100%. And your line of credit was going to be due in October, and we really think that you're going to be seeing cash come in November. So to take the pressure off, why don't we extend your line of credit through December? Why don't we extend the lease on your new tractor that you just bought for another 12 months? And so you pay back in 36 months versus 24. And we'll do that. We'll just add an extra 16th of a point interest onto the contract to accommodate all this. That's a different discussion. That's an interaction, because I'm bringing value to the conversation that you don't have. And that's the value add that a salesperson is going to have. So that gets into this whole thing of, yeah, it's going to change how we sell, but it's also going to, who's successful doing that? Because, you know, in the past, when I was at IBM, persuasion was a big sales skill. We want you to be able to go in and convince the customer to do things your way. Well, I think that's going to be used. There'll still be parts of that in sales, but there's also going to be collaboration. There's going to be co-creation. And I think those are the things we need to start also looking at attributes about, you know, we're going to have different kind of conversations. Does the salesperson understand how to read a balance sheet? Do they understand shareholder value? Do you understand and practice win-win? And so I think we'll see a lot of changes going over the profession of sales because of AI and access to all this data, and the ability for me to really be what I came out of college as a counselor, and really sit down and counsel companies on how to do this.
Yeah, wow, that is so powerful. So one thing, and then it leads me to a couple more questions, is so AI is sitting back at every technology that we are using or we are about to use. So any software that you're using, it probably has AI enabled technologies behind that. Facebook has it, Google has it, Amazon has it. And chances are that if you're buying a software for your company, like a CRM software, it would have AI at the back of it. So we don't need to really take care of AI that way. Now, Jim, is it true that the more you use the same AI process, the smarter the AI gets? For instance, you know, if I'm running an ad on YouTube, the more I run that ad for the number of days with the same profiling that I've done, the smarter AI will get. That's my number one question. And the number two question that I have is that, can AI be wrong sometimes? Or is it like it's going to be accurate all the time?
Okay, well, let's deal with them one at a time. So yes, there's an aspect of AI called machine learning. So not all AI has a machine learning construct to it, but some does. And in those types of cases, you know, what it will start to do is do two things. It will take a look at the macro level. I'm running the same ad and it's doing really, really well in India, but it's not doing really, really well in Japan. So it will do that on the thing, and it'll tell you why. So you could sit there and make a decision. But on the individual level, it's also going to be tracking, did Jim click on that ad? So Jim doesn't click on ads when they're talking about, you know, saving up for retirement for kids, because Jim doesn't have kids. But Jim does click on ads when it talks about saving up money so you can leave money in your estate to charities. So as start to learn, and based on the things that it learns about you, it will also make better decisions at the micro level, at the personal level of pushing things out to you. There's a documentary called The Social Dilemma that I think everyone should take a look at, because it's really talking about the dark side of all of that, and how, you know, that kind of things can be manipulative in terms of, you know, convincing you to do things by only sharing things that support your point of view on things. But it's definitely out there. And I think that it will, again, make it more valuable our times. Your second question, can AI be wrong? AI can be wrong, you know, because it's, you know, AI is making decisions based on the quality of data. And so, you know, there was a old technology term called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, that said, you know, you got to have clean data. And I think that's the type of thing. If you've got bad data, you can have AI make assumptions that, again, human beings are going to have to validate. And that becomes kind of challenging because there's not always an audit trail in how AI got to a conclusion. So it will tell you, in medical science, based on the analysis I've done, here's what I would do to the manufacturing of this new chemical. But it can't always replicate how it got there. And so there's this trust issue of, well, if I can't go back and put together all the pieces, how can I validate what you're making a suggestion on? And I think that's really where the partnership is going to be there for a long time between the technology, high tech, and the human, high touch, in terms of making sense of all those things. But yeah, we've got to, it's always the thing about trust but verify. And I think that's one of the things we should be looking at. But it's AI will open up thoughts for you that you could never possibly have thought of yourself, because you can't create all the constructs that it will create to do all these different type of variants of analysis. And it doesn't care if it does 1,000 things and 999 don't generate anything. It's ready to do another 1,000. Human beings, we do 5 things and 4 of them don't work. We get ticked off and we get discouraged. So I think that's really where we've got to use technology to do what it can do, but also get in there and be part of the equation.
Yeah, wow. Oh, that's a lot of good stuff, Jim. Last 2 questions I have for you. First is, how difficult is it, in your experience dealing with different companies, for older professionals who've been doing sales for about 15 to 30 years to adjust themselves to accept that now they have to work with artificial intelligence? Because there are a lot of folks out there, in that range.
There is a generational issue that we need to understand and take a look at. It's like, I think some of the more seasoned salespeople that are out there, I would say predominantly guys, get kind of set in their ways. And it's like, get out of my way. I'm 200% a quota. Why do I need to look at this stuff? And I think that's the type of thing where we have to realize that, that a younger generation, they're used to going to technology. I'm used to, I don't know something, let's Google it. Let's go through and do some analysis. Let's take a look at social and all those things. So I think it's going back through and understanding, if you're trying to implement AI for sales, what are the dynamics? And I always talk about the first sale you need to make with AI for sales is an internal sale. What's in it for me? And also, why is this not bad for me? Are you sure you're not going to try to take my job? And so I think those are things where we need to go back and it's just say, look, this is how you're currently doing prospecting. This is how you could be doing prospecting. The technology could be, analyzing which people to go at. It could be doing your total addressable market analysis. Based on that, it could say, here's the ideal customer profile for your territory. Based on that idea, customer profile, here are the people that fit that profile who are actually showing signs they want to buy something now. And so you sit there and say, if we start positioning AI as doing the grunt work for you, but also being your coach, 24/7. You want to get up on Saturday and start thinking about what you're going to do next week. AI is available. I think people are definitely, once you implement it, the early adopters are seeing major changes in how they work with customers.
Wow. Okay. So my last question, and I think that's important before we come to how can people, I'll come to the fact of how people can get in touch with you. What is the importance of relationships and a telephone with AI now in 2021 and in the coming years?
When people talk about buying, it's people buying. And so it's not my company buys, somebody within that company made a decision. And it's really interesting. So at CSO Insights, when I was still there, they did a study where they interviewed 500 B2B buyers. And everybody talks about, well, buyers are engaging sellers later and later in the process, and so it's way, they've already done a whole bunch of buying steps. So I think what they've done is they've done data gathering. I don't think they've really done data interpretation or analysis yet. But I think the key was a valid question. And so they asked the question, when do you involve salespeople? And some people said, we do our own needs analysis, or we do our own, long list creation of vendors to take a look at, or we even get it down to the short list. So they showed us it was various stages. They were involving salespeople less and less. And then we asked the question, is there anything that would make you involve a salesperson earlier in the process? And only 9% said there's nothing, which meant 91% said there's something. And that something fell into 3 categories. And I think this is really, really key for us to understand, because the buyers are telling you, if you will do this for me, I'll invite you to the party earlier. And the first one is this new to me? If this is new to me, and you can come in and show me how you can help educate me, I'll invite you in earlier. I want to be educated. I don't want to be stupid. I don't want to make mistakes down the road. The second thing was, is this risky? And risk came in 2 flavors. Is this risky to me personally? If this project fails, I get fired, or is this risky to our company? And then the third thing was, is this complex? Do I have to go out and build consensus? I can't go make the decision myself. I'm implementing CRM, so I've got to involve sales, I've got to involve IT, I've got to involve sales ops, I probably have to involve marketing because marketing systems got to interface with the sales system. So it's complex. I've got to build consensus. And I think those are really the key things on there. Those are human things. Those are one-on-one things or a team-to-team type of things. And, we're living in the middle of COVID right now, so everything's being done, a lot more in this type of environment. So it's face-to-face, sort of. But there's still a lot of stuff being done on the phone. But I think going back through and saying, we really need to understand the customer's journey. And we need to understand the customer and what they're doing. And again, this can get back to being complex, because I got a call from a company in the United Kingdom. And they said, hey, I understand you're taking a look at AI for sales. We've got a solution for doing psychophysiological buyer persona analysis. And I said, I have no idea what that means. And they said, it's easier if we just show you. And so I said, okay, show me. And they said, check your email. So I checked my email. There's an 18-page report on me. They have never met me.
Whoa.
But they're using AI to go back through and do an analysis. So page 3 in this report had my social media thing. So here's Jim Dickie on LinkedIn, Jim Dickie on Twitter. Here's presentations where I've spoken at conferences where the recordings are on YouTube. Here's articles that I've written for CRM Magazine and Harvard Business Review. And it's analyzing all those things and what I said and what I liked and what I didn't like. And it's doing this analysis. I think it was page 8. They did an Ocean 5 personality profile on me that was scary, spot on.
Oh.
It says, Jim is very analytical. Jim needs facts and figures on everything. Jim is not necessarily a team player. I'm kind of more of a lone wolf. I understand that about myself as well. It also had a thing of, when am I social? So you start to get insights into who Jim is. So let's say you've got a major account, you're a champion who you've worked with and have developed a great relationship with leads, and I come in. Well, how do you find out about me? Well, this thing would tell you some things about you, at least get you started. And it sat there also said, Jim is very, very social on social media on Saturdays and Sundays. And I didn't realize that, but I guess because that's when I check out, what are my peers doing? What's Tamara Shank, who's a sales enablement expert in Germany, doing? So those types of things. And so it said, well, geez, if you were to reach out to me, you'd reach out to me on the weekend. You'd reach out to me via LinkedIn, because I'm on there and I use it a lot. I've got 22,000 connections. I live in that application. Here's a way to get hold of me. But the last thing that was really interesting was the last page says, if you're going to have a conversation with Jim the first time, here's what to know. Here's his personality style. Here's his communication style. Here's how he makes decisions. And it was so spot on. It had one thing wrong. It said, Jim may have a problem with sarcasm. And I have a PhD in sarcasm. But other than that, here's the thing. It's a very, very valuable tool for helping me build that relationship.
Yes.
That I don't go into this thing cold, that I look at learning things from your point of view. So AI can do it. The question is, should we be doing that? Is there an invasion of privacy? I think those are a lot of questions that we're going to tie into this whole thing on information you can get, but should you get it? And there's no, there's a lot of ethical issues that are going to have to be solved over the next couple of years. And that'll be an interesting challenge based on where you are in the world, whether it's India or China or the US or European Union. I think that those are going to be challenging. But yeah, there are things that will make relationships and how business is going to be done. And AI will deepen those relationships.
I think there's going to be a constitution. I mean, there has to be, right, around the world when it comes to privacy. And you will have a lot of lawyers come up. I think that's another field that would boom because of AI laws. And I think people have not yet figured out. And Social Dilemma, the movie that you spoke about, after I saw the movie, I kept telling every family to watch that movie as a family movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because, if you're watching it as a kid, it's one thing. If you're watching it as a parent, you want to tell your kid, but if you're watching it as a family, you realize everything, together. So I agree with you. It's a lot of power, but it comes with a lot of responsibility, as the cliche goes in Spider-Man, right? With power comes responsibilities. Okay,
Yeah.
Jim, I think there's a lot of value, and there's so much more to you. And I would love for corporates in India and anybody who's watching this, for that matter, anywhere in the world, to know, how do people get in touch with you? Is there a process? And if somebody had an inquiry about their business, how do you work with companies, and how's the whole structure to that?
Yeah, so the major thing you can do is go to our website at salesmastery.com. Anybody wants to email me directly, it's jim@salesmastery.com. But the two things we do that might be of interest to people out there is, number one, we publish a AI for Sales solution guide every year that just gives you a snapshot. It's about 100 pages, but it just says, here are types of solutions that are out there and here's what they do. And if anybody wants to email me, happy to send it out. We just put that out as a kind of a service to the community, and especially the sales world. The second thing is we do an annual AI for Sales study. And on that one, any company, big or small, who takes part in the study, we send them the full results for free as just a thank you for it. If you're willing to share us your thoughts, we're willing to share them back. And we're really looking for three audiences. We are looking for the people that have implemented AI for Sales, but we're also looking for people who are just evaluating it. And we're also interested in feedback from people who have no interest at all, because it's really those three segments of it. So anybody that would like to take part in that study, we did the analysis, but we keep gathering data all year. Again, we'd be happy to send them the results of the study, and just a way of, again, getting more insights into what's going on in the world of sales and technology.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I think a lot of us would need Jim. And it's my humble request, if it's difficult for you to figure it out, or if you have a lot of data because you've got into AI early, and you watch this interview, Jim is the guy. And I'm so happy that, he took the time out. It's the first time we are having somebody speak about AI, as I said in the beginning. So he's got the experience, he's got the expertise in that. So do reach out to him. You have the credentials. Jim, I want to say a big thanks. It means a lot. It's powerful, the information that you've shared. And anybody looking at it 2 years, 5 years down the line would look at this interview and be like, I should have listened to that guy. if they are late on this process, because what you shared is very valuable. So thanks on that. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
Welcome. Bye-bye.